Welcome to this episode of Women in Rugby League and the Pioneering Years. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce someone who has been involved in rugby league and particularly women's rugby league for goodness me, from probably the start, if we begin to sort of peel back the years of when she sort of started and began, or very, very early doors, and is still actively involved now, which I'm always interested in how people have developed and keep their passion for the sport. So welcome, Mina.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you.
Right, we're going to start from the beginning. About tell us where you started in rugby league and what got you interested, and then we'll go on to a bit about your involvement, which has been pretty prolific throughout your years.
Yeah, so I suppose I started. My sister played. My sister played when she was at school. I think she was about 14, 15. So I would have been about 16, 17 at college. And I was always sort of sporty and a bit tomboyish. But there wasn't a team then for me to play. Oh, I didn't know of one, I should have said, really. I didn't really know of one. And then a couple of years later, when I was about 18, 19, was in a pub and some girl came up to me and said, "Oh, Mina, what about your sister? Did your sister fancy playing rugby?" And I went, "Well, why are you asking about Dawn? I wouldn't mind going up and a go." Anyway, because there was a few of us in the pub, all six of the girls, those six girls together, all of us said, "Yeah, we'll go. It'll be a right laugh. We'll go. We'll go to the rugby training." And all six of us went. And I think it was a wet, I remember it was wet, it was cold, it was muddy. And they went, "Right, run around the pitch as a warm up." And by which point, three of my friends went, "I'm not doing that," and went and got in the cars and went, "Oh." And I sort of set off. And I just loved it. I think from the minute I literally got there, all the women were so welcoming. They were having a laugh with you. They were all throwing mud at each other or whatever they were doing. And I just fitted in. I just thought, this is where I want to be. And just loved it from that minute, I think. So I think it was probably meant for me to get into it really.
And what team was that then?
It was actually we initially tried to set well, the lady who asked me to come was trying to set a team up at our local clubbing league, um, which didn't end up amounting to anything, to be fair, in the end. But we then merged with another team. Now, I don't know, it was when one of St Pat's teams might have folded, and we sort of had a few of those players, and we ended up at Hindley in the end. So that's where I played my first years of rugby league. Was at Hindley. With quite a few players actually. Jane Banks, obviously Hall of Fame. Sharon Johnson. Yeah, a few of them were there then. So yeah, it was good. It was
Yeah.
really good fun. And
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 had you
just
had a background in rugby league then? Had you been going to
no.
games
I'd watched Lee. I had a lot of friends because I was tomboy. I had a lot of male friends who'd played, and I'd sort of knew the rules, and I'd been on the sideline screaming at my friends playing. But that was about it. That was about it. Like I said, been to a few league games when they were at the old at Hilton Park then. Um, but yeah, but not really like involved, just more of a supporter, if anything.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, so you hadn't had a chance to play it. It's really interesting when you sort of explore the Wigan and Leigh history, about how as one team folded, another set up, and that was very much sort of Wigan, St Pat's, then Hindley, wasn't it?
Mm, yeah, so I think we saw, and I saw that a few times actually. I think, going over the next few years, I think there was a point when Hindley folded and then Warrington ladies got set up again. I think Warrington ladies went full circle. Um, yeah, and then St Pat's would set up again, and you get a whole raft of new players coming through that way. But you did have a bit of up and down with the teams and swapping teams and things, I think, in the early days.
Mm.
Yeah.
And was it the same women sort of moving team to team?
Sometimes I think you'd sort of get one or two new players and then you'd lose a couple of players to another team. So it sort of kept a balance, really. I don't think, you look at the growth now and you think it's nothing like what's happening now with new players coming into the sport. I think
Mm.
you were lucky if you got two or three. And it was usually somebody like me had been roped in when they'd had a few beers, I suppose. But I think the inclusive nature of rugby meant once you was in, you was in. You sort of just felt included, so you never wanted to leave.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about those early days and the competition that you played in, because Hindley was sort of 1990s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think 94, 95, maybe
Mm.
96. Those years really. Um, well, it was winter. It was winter. It was just always so cold. It was always cold and wet. And then you would go over to like the likes of Bradford and Wakefield and Barrow, and I'm sure it was always even 3 degrees colder over that side of the Pennines. It was just always, I just always remember being freezing all the time. And I think when I first started, I played on the wing. I was laughing with one of my friends the other day saying, I don't think I made a tackle in the first season because the lady who was my centre, Sharon, she just tackled everything what came near me, so I didn't have to do anything. Every so often I'd run a ball in. So yeah, because I didn't know how to catch, I didn't know how to pass, I didn't know how to tackle, but nobody cared. And I think that was the best thing about it. But I think the league had about 10, 12 teams in it at that point. Um, and I remember I used to drive, so we'd all pile in my little, I think I had a Fiesta or something then, and we'd all pile with all our bags, and half wouldn't fit in the boot, and you'd be all cramped and stuff, and driving over the Pennines, and then we'd be talking about what had been happening that weekend, and it was relatively chilled, actually. I must admit, it was chilled, and it was always quite nice because it was always just chatty on the way there. Um, I look back now and I think about the changing rooms and I think, there was people smoking in the changing rooms because that was okay then. There was no smoking ban then, that was fine. So yeah, you had that going on when we was on a coach. People used to smoke on the coach because they
Mm.
were okay. It was okay. So you think now you wouldn't even hear of that, would you? And I think going back to like the coaches. I remember we had a coach, we called him Sprucey, and he very much gave us tough love. There was I wouldn't say compassion was his thing at the time. I remember I used to go on the coach and so as I progressed and got a little bit better, sometimes I'd be promoted to fullback and I hated it. I just hated playing fullback. It was awful. And as soon as we got to either a coach or we were meeting up ready to travel, he'd say things like, Mina, don't come to me now. And I'd be begging him, please don't put me in football, please, please. Put me back on the wing. And he'd be like, you're just going to do it. Man up, it's happening. And you couldn't get him round. There was no chance. No chance. So
Uh,
yeah, it was fun.
and who were the teams to watch then at that time?
Wakefield, Bradford. You had Lisa Mack playing at Bradford. Obviously Brenda at Wakefield. Well, you never knew what she was going to do at ball. She could have done anything. At least with Lisa, you knew she was just going to run over you. You wouldn't have a chance there. Um, so I think them two, Barrow, I think they were probably the main three. Three then. So yeah,
Yeah, because didn't Hindley get in some cup finals at that
yeah,
time?
we that's
Yeah.
when I had my first cup final. I was at Hindley. The first time I'd ever played in a stadium, it was like I can't remember what stadium it was. It was nothing like like St Helens or Wigan have now. It was some small
They
championship.
used to be sort of
Um,
Batley, Dewsbury, Featherstone.
yeah,
They were
something
the
like
ones that were
that.
supportive, yeah.
Um, but it was just an event. It was a day out, and we had supporters come on a coach with us. It was to actually have supporters, I suppose, was quite exciting. And you did feel nervous, you did feel nervous going out, and you didn't want to let your friends down either. I think there's something about that team spirit in rugby. You talk about camaraderie, but it does feel like going to war a little bit, doesn't it? I think, I
Mm, yeah,
suppose,
yeah.
when you walk on a pitch, and you don't want to let anybody down. You don't want to be that person who misses the tackle when they score, or you just don't want to. So I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself when you're walking when you're walking onto a rugby pitch, and even more so when it's a final and you're gonna win some silverware potentially at the end of it.
So can you remember that day very well about how it actually went and
Oh, I remember that we didn't win. It was a Challenge Cup final. It was a Challenge Cup final. I remember it was a Challenge Cup final, and I remember that we didn't win. And I'm almost certain we played Wakefield. I'm almost certain. I mean, it was a long time ago that. You're talking
yeah.
what, 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, it probably
Um,
would. Wakefield were unbeaten for in the Challenge Cup probably for 11, 12 years. And then they lost
yeah,
one, but then they won again. Interestingly. Yeah. And they just won everything. They just swept everything. I know um Bradford and Barrow beat them in a game, and that was
unheard of.
unheard of. They all celebrate that. I remember when we beat Wakefield.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you even scored, you felt like you were privileged, I think,
Yeah.
a little bit. But yeah.
So what were the highs and lows then of playing at that time?
Highs and lows. The friendship. You know, I made friends with people that then who are still my friends now. You might not see them for years and years and years, and then you bump into them at an event or you bump into them somewhere else, and it's like you've not seen them. So
Mm.
definitely, I think they're definitely the highs. And obviously, you know, we did have a couple of other finals or semi-finals. We had quite a good run when we was at Hindley, actually.
Mm.
So that was good. I think the lows were, I mean, touch wood, I was lucky. I never had a serious injury, but when you see somebody get injured, and I think, you know, you look at rugby league now, and you look at the support you have as an injured player now, and that just wasn't the same
Mm.
then, really. And a lot of the players, you know, you have to get up for work on a Monday morning, even though you've played on a Sunday, or you have children at home. So I think the injuries, or seeing some people take some really big injuries, was not nice. And I think going back to the teams folding, and I think we could have been a little bit nicer to each other, and maybe helped each other, so that didn't happen. And obviously now in Masters, I see a bit more of that coming through. We do help each other so that games are played, as opposed to it was a bit more cutthroat, I think then. So I
Mm.
think it was that really at the laws. We didn't have many. To be fair, I don't have that many.
I know
Just
you just loved
enjoy.
it, didn't you? So what happened
I
after
did.
Hindley then?
So after Hindley, um, I said, oh, I'm going to stop playing for a bit because I was training as an accountant, and I just got a new job, and I didn't really know how that was going to go. And I just thought I'll just have a break for a bit. And then Jane Banks said, oh, I'm going to set up a team at Warrington. Will you come and just play for a bit, Mina, just see what you like it or not? And then I was back again, and just, but I'd missed it. I'd missed it why I hadn't played, because what do you do on a Sunday if you're not playing rugby? That's what it felt like.
In the mud and
Um,
the rain.
yeah, in the mud and the rain and the cold. Um, so yeah, so I went playing at Warrington, and there was a few players who came over from Hindley, but quite a few new players as well then who I'd not met before. So I gained a whole load of new friends going over to Warrington. And Warrington was slightly different in I think it stepped up a bit by then, and I think there was a little bit. Obviously, Jane had been on tour then, and we knew more about fitness and prevention and how you kept yourself a bit better in shape. It was less risk of injury, and I think it was I wouldn't say it was scientific because it's nothing like it was, but you could feel a difference. You could feel a difference from the early days to then.
Mm.
Um, the support from the Warrington Community Trust was amazing. You know, they would help us with travel. They would help us with coaching. We had a few Warrington players come and coach us on ad hoc days. So it just felt a bit different. I think we went and played. We played a touch curtain raiser at Warrington in the stadium, in the new stadium, the Halliwell Jones. Well, was new then,
Mm.
Witherspoon. So it felt different. It did feel different. I think the jump from Hindley going into Warrington, it just yeah, felt a bit more professional in that regard. And that's not being disrespectful to Hindley. It was just
Mm-mm.
the time difference between the two, I think,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
felt different.
Yeah, it was interesting once the professional club sort of started getting properly involved, wasn't it? Because you then
Mm.
did get that bit of support. Um, so what happened? What you met? So how long did you play for Warrington then?
Ooh, um, probably another 3 or 4 years. I played for Warrington until, I should know this, 2004. I only know because I stopped playing because I was pregnant with my son. So, and I remember because I found out I was pregnant, and then I was like, can I play touch? Can I still play touch? And Jane was like, no, you can't. You can't. If you fall over, you can't. And then as it happened, Jane also got pregnant slightly after me. So we ended up um, both being pregnant. I mean, luckily at that point, Warrington was so strong in its player base that even though a few players had left, it didn't matter because they had a really, and that was again the community trust supporting it, the community trust doing the work in the schools to feed us. And even though there wasn't really much in terms of girls, there was a little bit, they had a place to go then. And so again, you can see it was different. So I think when I was at Hindley, it was people were adults
Yeah.
who were starting in the main. Whereas when we got to Warrington, there was a little bit more of a feed through of people or younger girls who had played. Um,
So a bit of a
and it,
pathway into it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting, isn't it? And then it sort of the legacy of it then began to sort of, although it didn't last as long, didn't Warrington? But it was interesting as the it changes and the depth
mm,
comes in a lot more. It's interesting, isn't it? And I suppose that shaped you, didn't it, to what you sort of went on next and
yeah,
what you wanted
definitely.
to do.
So I had a couple of years out. So I had my son in 2005, my first son. I had my second son in 2007. And then girls' teams it was starting a little bit. And all my friends growing up had all played for Lee Miners. And they were looking at a girls' team, and I think the coach said to me, "Oh, well, you're the only player we know who's played. Will you come and do a few coaching?" And I'll be honest with you, coaching isn't really my thing at all. It's just not. I'm not made. I have so much admiration for coaches. But I went anywhere, and then sort of got this idea about why don't we do ladies? There was loads of mums there, and the boys section of Lee Miners is massive. Like we've got a pool of women here who are watching rugby with the sons every week. So started toying with that idea, and then in the end ended up going to the club committee meeting at the senior section. Basically walking in, and I remember it makes me chuckle, but I had a full-on business case, full on. I had everything. I had potential growth, I had subs numbers, I had everything. I'm walking into the committee meeting to them all looking at me as though I had six heads and thinking, God. And to be fair to the committee, they listened, and then they just said, "Oh, we'll get back to you." And when you walk out, and it was a bit Dragon's Den-ish, if I'm honest.
Mm.
Loads of people before I'd walked in had said, "There's no way, I mean, the committee will not agree." These are older gentlemen who there's no way they're going to let a women's team into this club. They're just not going to do. And fair play to them, they got back to me the next day and went, "Okay, okay, we'll give it a go. We'll give it a go." And yeah, that's as far as I got at that point. But they did. And I think listening back to stories of what happened when I left the room, I think there was a division, and I think they had quite a lot of debate over whether they should or they shouldn't, which is fine because I think any decision
Hmm.
you should do that. Um, One of the members, his wife actually spoke to me since and said, Harry came home and said, "This girl's been to the committee and she's asked, can we set up a team? And what do you think we should do?" And she says, "I turned around and I told him that why would they not want women in the team?" So I think I've got a few people to thank really for persuading some of them. But yeah, they came back, and to be fair to that, from that point on, I don't think I've ever heard the word no from that committee, ever. We've had some debates about some things, but they've never ever blanket ignored anything I've asked for. And that was from setting up the ladies, which I think, when you think about clubs, obviously, like I said, I'm an accountant, so I always think of the money side of it. It can
Mm.
be quite expensive, kit, training facilities, coaching equipment. And they were always on board. They were always on board with that. Obviously, they said, "Well, why don't you go and try and get a sponsor, Mina?" or stuff like
Mm.
that. And we would. So yeah, so that's sort of how the ladies started at Lee Miners. We had a few training sessions. Numbers were like 9, 10, not enough for a team. And then um, one of the girls had some sisters who were playing at West Orton, a local club to us, and I went down and met some of them and said, you're getting 5 or 6 players, we're getting 8 or 9, 10 players. Why don't we look at joining together? And they also had a coach. So they agreed to come over to us. And then we had enough for a team. It was like, oh my God, enough for a
We're
team.
going to play now.
Meanwhile, I know, it was like, oh, right, what do we do next? And there was a few, a lot who hadn't played before, ever. Um, he's my friend now, Claire. Claire Radford, she's from West Orton. I was originally one of the West Orton ones who came over. She'd played before, her sisters had played before, so that was quite good. Um, whilst this is going on, and I don't know if you know much about Lee, but we're at Lee Miners, and Lee East had a team as well.
Yeah, I've seen it in the fixture list. I'm at the minute collating all the teams in what years, and I
Oh
went, oh,
yeah.
I am, yeah, yeah. So it's fascinating. But I did notice that there was, and I thought, oh goodness, because I used to referee both those teams as well, and I knew the rivalry between those two teams. So yes, when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that was so we decided it would be a really good idea to play Lee East as our first ever fixture with half of us who hadn't played. I think we had a couple who were 16-year-old. Um, yeah, so we were just like, oh my God. Anyway, we went and played, and to be fair to them, they absolutely annihilated us. They didn't have a clue. So yeah, that was probably the start really. And we had a few fixtures with them over the years, which were always good, always good. Um, so yes, we started off at Lee Miners as a ladies team, grew in numbers quite quickly though in that first season. I think we started as they had a semi-season between winter moving to summer. So it was like a half season in between. We did a half
Mm.
season, was our first season, then we went into the summer sort of period as Lee Miners. And we just, I don't know what it was, we just attracted people. And it was really good. At one point we had like 25, 26 players. It was amazing. Um, one of the things we did realise though was that our age profile was quite old. Oh, it was. We was all heading that way. I mean, I was in my mid to late 30s by then, touching 40. I wasn't quite 40 at that point. And we did have a lot of discussions about girls and about setting up a girls' side. And I mean, we was lucky. We had quite a few different coaches. I mean, we did go through quite a few coaches. But one of them was Cliff Tamu, who
Oh, lovely
has
Cliff.
daughters, and he was really good actually. And I think going back to what we was talking about at Warrington and really seeing what a difference, even if you just had girls who'd been playing at school, what a difference that made. Um, I decided then to go to our junior section and ask and see if they would be interested in setting up a girls. And I think the main aim would be to start at under 12s, go to under 12s, under 14s, under 16s for a feeder for the women's side. And I think ultimately one of the plans, what we really, well, I suppose between me and Cliff, we sort of cooked it up a little bit more, was around we wanted it to feel female. And I'm not sexist in any way, but we wanted a role modeling type of structure. We wanted female coaches. We want to really develop in that way.
Mm.
And again, remember, I am not a coach, not something I want to do. So then I was looking to the ladies in the team who wanted to coach, and a few of them put their hands up. Catherine Thompson, or was Thompson then, Catherine put her hand up, and Celia Farriman, they both said, I'll step up and if we're looking at girls. So I went to the junior section. Initially, they went, we just we can't fit a girls team in here. We just can't do it. And I think they were concerned about, the volunteering, the support, not the money side of it, interestingly enough. I think it was actually the infrastructure you need to set up new teams, what really concerned them. So I went back again to the senior section, by which point I'd been on the committee for quite a while. And I think seen quite a big shift in attitude. I think the men in the club, and I know we've touched on this before, really changed. Like they would ask me when how's your ladies gone on today? Have you won? How are you doing for numbers? When we won our first trophy, they put some free drinks on. They all clapped us when we came in the club, and
Oh,
it was
lovely.
just amazing. It was
Goosebumpy.
amazing from see. I know to see from when we started, where there was a big debate, is this allowed? And people telling me you're never going to have a ladies team, to now being in a club where people just were genuinely interested about a ladies team. So that shift had happened over these, but definitely took a while and took a lot of relationship building, I think. So then to go to the junior section and ask, and then I wouldn't say it was a blanket no, but it was a very, well, I'm not sure how we would even accommodate you sort of thing. It did feel like a bit of a blow at the time. So I went back to the senior section there, went, Mina, just do it here, just do it here. And I think we started with under 12s. That first season was a bit touch and go, just not probably enough numbers. But luckily at that time, there were other teams. So Thato, at that point, in St Helens, they had loads of numbers, like loads. The likes of Jodie Cunningham and all those, they were all playing there at that age. So I reached out actually to Tara Jones, is it Brian Jones, I think he's called actually, and said to him, what have you done? What have you done? What are you doing to really develop the girls, what you're getting? And he was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic. He gave me a full-on case. I think I've got it still somewhere. About attitudes to girls, because one of the things which I'd never had is nobody had ever told me not to play, or had in my family or my friends. It had always been a really positive experience. And I'd never actually thought that at that point for a girl playing, it might not have been they might not have been encouraged by the parents to do that. And that made me think a little bit differently. So when we started the girls, we spent a lot of time really talking as players to parents about the benefits of rugby league. And I remember, I think Jane actually had done a presentation as part of a community trust when she worked at Warrington, around really talking to parents about, the benefits, the confidence it brings for a woman. And I still draw on some of that now in my current job, and just that teamwork and the communication skills and all the things which a male would get, but it's the same for a woman. We did quite a lot of that, and we were lucky that we had a really, really positive group of parents with our girls. Then we had a bit of a switch in coaching. I think Celia took over, Catherine left to have her children. And then Jenna Banks came on board then as well with the girls. So Jenna, we'd all played together anyway. And then it just boomed. It was like I stepped away from the girls at that point, because I was probably 41, 42, and then retired from open age. And so I stepped away from the club, if I'm honest, for for a bit. But the girls just grew and grew and grew. And you know, at that, I wasn't there for a lot of that. I just done the beginning bit, and Celia and Jenna and others had really took that to another level. One thing which we work on just was that girls, because we have two separate sites for senior and juniors, having girls in the senior section wasn't quite right. It just didn't feel right. They just didn't. So I think there was always a plan to move some of that over to the junior section. And I think as it formed, you could see that natural progression, which was good. So then I'd sort of retired, stepped away from the club. Obviously, my children were playing, well, one of my children were playing rugby, one did mixed martial arts. So I was off doing that for a bit, but then you just miss it. I missed it. I missed everything about it. And I contacted the RFL at that point. I'd seen Masters. My partner, actually, he played Masters. Lee Manners had a Masters men teams, and I was like to the RFL, what are you doing? Can we do something with women? And the RFL's response at that point was, well, we've not really got the resources to do it. And I hadn't realised that Masters at that point didn't fully come under the RFL in the way that it probably does now. So I sort of left it. I was a bit gutted, I'll be honest, because I just wanted to carry on playing. Personally, that's what I wanted to do. So I left it a bit, and then I saw a game between, I think it was Hull and Leeds, actually. A Masters Leeds game was the first one. I was like, oh my God, why have I not done this? And I was a bit gutted. But so I rang them again. And this time they got back to me and they went, no, we're looking. And I spoke to a lady called Kath Powers. And she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant. So we looked to set up, so I had to go back to the club again and say, right guys, I'm back.
Next thing.
I'm back again. And we look up setting a Masters. And that was different. That's been different. I've been doing that now for 4 years. Now become the national rep for the women's, for Masters. And that is different. After being a team manager for an open age, it's a lot less stressful. It's a social rugby, so that it's not as competitive in that way. People look out for each other. They call it the spirit of Masters, and it sounds really corny, but it actually means a lot to people. We have a team managers WhatsApp group, and everybody's so supportive to one another. If we're playing and we're short, you just put it on the group and they send players over so you can still play, and everybody just mucks in and helps each other out. And I think it's a brilliant concept. You know, I've got women from, I think our oldest is 76, the youngest is 31. So you've got a massive range of players with different abilities, different fitness levels, as you can imagine. Nobody, again, it's back to when I first started and nobody cares, because I think when we got into open age and we got into a real competitive streak, it becomes serious then. I think it becomes a bit more serious. And it has to, and it's right to do so. But I've sort of gone back now to feel like playing out with friends. That's what it feels like. So I've gone full circle now, which is nice. It's nice.
Yeah, and it's brilliant that you've been able to, and being pioneering. Let's not forget, you know, each one of those steps you had to put in place in order to make a difference within the club. And how's the club now around sort of all women and girls and through the pathway? And
Absolutely fantastic. So obviously, a lot of the players who've come through now play at Lee Leopards. So we have really close links with Lee Leopards. My sister-in-law and my niece both play for them, so I don't think they'd go mad if I didn't mention it. Yeah, you can see now we have a lot more female coaches as we wanted. And it just feels like everything came off. And I think, you know, sometimes you need a bit of luck. And I think the timeliness of when we did things give us a better fighting chance. I think, you know, some clubs might have tried it a bit later and probably not got the same level of momentum as we got. Um, but it feels good. I mean, they've had all the presentations this week at the club, so they've been all over social media. And you're looking at two teams at most age groups now. It's not even
Wow.
one team; it's two teams. Um, so yes, that it looks really good, and I think one of the things is that feeder into, and open age isn't the be all and end all. But I think now if you're a woman in Lee, or a girl in Lee, I should say, you can play from under 11 to whenever you want to, and you can go through that full pathway. And I think it's probably one of the most proudest things one of the things I'm most proud of, because I think that's amazing
Mm.
to know that somebody can do that if they want to. Um, and I think, women in particular, you do stop when you have your children, that's
Mm.
inevitable. Or you can't commit as much or whatever. And I think now with masters, we're allowed to, you've got an opportunity to do that. Obviously, you need to be 30 to play masters, but those women who have got young children in that age, it can still play.
Mm.
But the level of commitment isn't the same as if you're playing open age. So I think it keeps players in the game. And I hope, genuinely hope, that some of them young girls coming through get all the support network which I got and learn all them skills, or probably different in their own skills, won't they? But get that from playing rugby league. And those friendships, when you see the social media posts with so that you see them all, messing around, hugging each other, all of that, and you think, yeah, that's what it should be like. It's amazing. It is amazing.
It is from where you came from in those early days of
Mm.
playing on that park into Hindley and then Warrington. When you sort of look back and think about things that you've put in place and where the sport is now, what's your thoughts around that
About the sport now.
for women and girls, I'm thinking.
I think you look at we have televised matches now. It amazes me. I'm like astounded that happens these days. It is fantastic. The fact that Challenge Cup Day. I didn't go to the Challenge Cup. I actually went to the pub and watched a ladies' game on television. I just think it's amazing, and I
Yeah.
think, like I said, for those young girls coming through to see those role models, to see women commentating on men's matches. I just, yeah, I think it's like the sky's the limit now, isn't it?
Yeah,
I feel
it
like
is. Yeah.
there's no boundaries anymore in that. There's nothing, there's no blockers in anything. And I think there was times through when some of the things I've done, and I won't say they're blockers, but you have had to overcome some hurdles. I remember some of the days at Hindley where there was no changing rooms for us to get changed in. We couldn't have a shower after the game because there'd been a boys' game on and they'd been given the showers and there was no facilities to allow that to happen. Was that I can't, well, I've not seen that happen for a while now.
Mm.
I think we used to get a second-hand kit because we didn't have a sponsor because nobody would sponsor us because they're like, what is this? What are you talking about? Um, yeah, so I think a lot's changed now. Into
Mm.
there's a lot more support for it as well, and I think people can see the benefits of playing sport or anybody playing sport,
Mm.
in particular rugby leagues.
And I guess it's not in sort of our generation of coming through, was around should girls and women be playing, where there's not that question now, is there? It's that they are playing. And it's how do we ensure that they play to a higher level and potential rather than should girls be playing?
Yeah, yeah. So that's been a massive switch, hasn't it? Like I said, I was quite lucky at from my family and friends. There was nothing around not playing, but I know that I know players who have struggled with being, I suppose, girls being allowed to play.
Mm.
Um, whereas I think the awareness now is very different. I mean, you can see it with football as well. It's not just rugby league, isn't it?
Mm.
But I mean, I watch them in awe now on the television and think, oh my God, he's just ace. This is fab.
Wouldn't it have been fab to have played now?
Oh, I know. Too
Yeah.
old. Too old.
Well, you still do play, and
Yeah,
you're
I
an
do.
absolute phenomenon. I know when we sort of chatted a few weeks ago, your achievements are just phenomenal, and you are without people like you and your allies that are out there, male and female, we wouldn't be where we are today in the women and girls game. So personally, I'd like to thank you. Have we missed anything in anything that we've talked about? I know you've just had such the fact that you started, in your teens and then you're still playing now. Is just phenomenal that you're still able to play and very actively involved. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything what we've missed. No, I can't think of anything. I was just looking at my notes, but I can't think of anything.
Mina, thank you. And again,
Okay.
thank you for what you've done for Rugby League, particularly in Wigan and Lee. It's just phenomenal. If you begin to look at the history, there was nothing in Lee up until you
Mm.
coming along. There was nothing. It was all sort of few teams in Wigan, and it was, there wasn't a strength there. So you need to be very proud of your achievements and looking at the depth that you've created and the pathway. So, as you said, a young girl from under 11s right up to open age can participate in a sport that's like a religion in the area.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Julia.